Out of the many people that are online, I probably know quite a few of you, so hi there. I'll get to see your names in a minute. And I'm here broadcasting from my home on a lake in Minnesota. Many of us live on lakes in Minnesota, so that's not anything new. There's a couple of purposes we have today for sharing the building opportunities through IELCE project. One is I'm going to cover some of the basics of IELCE, in particular the what it says in law and the rules and regs and that sort of thing, give you a brief overview of that. And then I'm going to tell you about the project itself and what we're doing in terms of technical assistance that's happening now through the Manhattan Strategies Group under a federal contract. So let's go to the next slide. We'll see if I can advance them. So Sharon, I may need your help here to figure out. There we go, just a harder press on the button. I want to start with doing a little comparison of the previous adult education law under Workforce Investment Act, WIA, and the current one, WIOA. And this will begin my presentation on the basics of IELCE. So this slide indicates the evolutionary history of IELCE program from its start under WIA as the Civics program. You may have worked with that or heard about that under the Workforce Investment Act. But now under WIOA, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, the major differences are noted in red. First, under WIA, an Civics program was authorized as a grant program through annual appropriations. WIOA, though, across from that on the chart there, authorized and codified the Integrated English Literacy and Civics Education Program. There were no rules or regs promulgated under the WIA law. There are under WIOA, so that's a very big difference. Secondly, under WIA, the Civics program had no explicit focus on workforce development. Under WIOA, the IELCE program must be delivered in combination with integrated education and training, and we're using the IET acronym there. Finally, under WIA, the law was silent on specific service subpopulations as it pertains to individuals needing English language instruction. Under WIOA, the law clarifies that the IELCE program services are also available to professionals with degrees and credentials in their native countries. So it very much specified an additional subpopulation for eligibility under IELCE. Future slides will get more into these kinds of definitions and terms we're using. So, being a good federal consultant type person, I always start with definitions. So let's talk definitions for a minute. The definition of IELCE, as noted in WIOA, is education services provided to English language learners who are adults, including professionals with degrees and credentials in their native countries, that enables such adults to achieve competency in English language and to acquire the basic and more advanced skills needed to function effectively as parents, workers, as citizens in the United States. So a very broad definition there of IELCE. Further then, under section 243 of WIOA, IELCE is a grant program and must be provided in combination with integrated education and training, IET. Also, 243 funded programs must, 1, prepare ELL adults for and place such adults in unsubsidized employment and in-demand industries that lead to economic self-sufficiency. And 2, must integrate with the local workforce development system to carry out the activities of the program. I will be discussing many of these definitional components here in future slides. So this next slide, WIOA rules and regulations. I'll give you a chance to look at that a little bit as we move from slide to slide. As I mentioned earlier, the U.S. Department of Education has authority under WIOA to make regulations for Title II of WIOA, also known as the Adult Education and Family Literacy Act, AFLA. These regulations are codified in the Code of Federal Regulations, or CFR. Subparts D and G of these regulations are directly applicable to IELCE. Subpart D identifies eligible adult education and literacy activities, which include English language acquisition, integrated education and training, and integrated language and civics education, among several others. Subpart G specifically reflects the IELCE grant program and contains regulations specific to IELCE. Should have a graphic on your screen now. This is a program component graphic that I think simplifies and illustrates the 6 important IELCE program components, as well as the concept of in combination with IET, as required under Subpart G of the federal regulations for IELCE. The key feature for the IELCE program under Subpart G is that the first 3 components must also be delivered in combination with the 3 IET components on the graphic: adult education and literacy, workforce prep, and workforce training. This is a useful graphic for IELCE program designers to make sure they are including all 6 components and meeting the in combination with IET concept required under WIOA Section 243. Integrated education and training. Back to definitions. Here is the WIOA definition of integrated education and training. IET is a service approach that provides adult education and literacy activities concurrently and contextually with workforce preparation activities and workforce training for a specific occupation or occupational cluster for the purpose of educational and career advancement. The concepts of concurrently and contextually are very important to note. And the next slide will cover the requirement of how the components of adult education and literacy, workforce prep, and workforce training need to be integrated and provided in a concurrent and contextual manner. So what does these 2 terms, concurrent and contextualized, mean with regard to the 3 components of IET? 3 things, really. It means that the IET component, and remember, that's adult education, literacy, workforce preparation, and workforce training, has sufficient intensity and quality. They should be occurring simultaneously and use industry-relevant materials for instruction. And just a note here, don't get too hung up on the term simultaneously in this sense. There is some flexibility here, but what it is not as a concept is that the 3 components occur sequentially, one after the other. That's not the concept of concurrency. Also, IET programs are required to have a single set of learning objectives that identifies specific adult education content, workforce preparation activities, and workforce training competencies. And these program activities are organized to function cooperatively, as opposed to functioning in a non-integrated or sequential fashion. Meeting the requirement that the IET program be for the purpose of education and career advancement, as you remember from that definition I read previously. As you saw on that earlier slide defining IET, the IET program must be for the purposes of education and career advancement. To satisfy IET requirements when designing IET curriculum for an IELCE program, the program must do 2 things. 1, be aligned with the state's content standards for adult education, and 2, be part of a career pathway. Two options for meeting the IELCE in combination with IET requirement. Recall from the IELCE graphic that the adult education and literacy activities and the English language acquisition and the civics education activities must be delivered in combination with the IET requirement. One obvious option is to provide an IET program using the 243 grant funds that your program has received. Those are the IELCE grant funds. But another option is to co-enroll IELCE participants in IET programming that is provided through other funded resources, such as WIOA Title I, the workforce title of WIOA, or through regular adult education funds, often called Section 231 funds, or through a CBO, community-based organization, or even through another adult education program's IET program. Partnership between and among local providers is also another way to link to an IET program. Those were the basic slides on what is involved in IELCE structurally and under the various requirements. I'm going to shift now to the Building Opportunities project that Sharon described, working through the Manhattan Strategy Group under federal contract. So this slide provides the URL for the Building Opportunities through the IELCE project. This site is hosted through the Links Network, which is a very rich area of adult educational resources. The purpose of the project is to support states and their provider partners in the implementation of the new program requirements in IELCE. It operates using the Manhattan Strategy Group as a contractor through funding received from the U.S. Department of Education. Major project technical systems, activities and technical assistance. The audience focus for the Building Opportunities project is a 36-state professional development collaborative, which consists of state-level partners and one or more IELCE local program partner in each state. All states were provided the opportunity to join the collaborative to receive the various types of technical assistance noted in the slide. Those technical assistance activities include direct IELCE training, development of tools and resources, the development and maintenance of the collaborative itself, development of an IELCE virtual community of practice, also abbreviated COP, and the identification of best practices, which we're calling, for purposes of this project, bright spots. Activities, observations, and reflections. This slide and the next one describe the status to date regarding our technical assistance activities. First, we have established an IELCE public website on the Links platform, which provides detailed information about the project and contains a variety of useful resources. Secondly, we have established a Communities of Practice private discussion group that includes, to date, 108 members, which are state staff, local providers, MSG, Manhattan Strategy Group staff, and state team coaches. The COP features IELCE program descriptions, and members can discuss issues and challenges on that Community of Practice platform. The COP is moderated, and peer-to-peer interactions are encouraged on the site. Also, we are delivering virtual technical assistance to members of the National IELCE Collaborative through a network of 6 IELCE coaches. The states have been grouped into teams, typically 2 states per team, and each state has 1 or more state-level collaborative members and 1 or more local provider partner members. From the Communities of Practice postings, and as our coaches discuss issues with our participating collaborative members, we have noted several IELCE implementation challenges. For example, there are IET issues regarding the inclusion of non-certified occupational programming. There are difficulties in serving lower-level students needing higher-level skills for in-demand occupations in an area. Also, issues were reported regarding finding enough students for a viable IET class. Another one was specific certificated area. Okay, I'm going to go back on that. My page just fell apart. Finding enough students for a viable IET class in a specific certificated area. So Sometimes in smaller programs, you can't find a cohort large enough to make a class viable for a specific occupational area, and with the certification attached to it. Another challenge was building collaborations and partnerships to maximize resources. As issues and challenges are uncovered, a role of the coaches and an objective of the COP is to identify these implementation challenges, discuss solutions, and if possible, identify resources that address these challenge areas. And I should add that since this slide was developed, other challenges have been identified through the collaborative, such as having multi-level ELL students in the class, providing an array of support services that are needed by students, grading funded challenges, student recruitment and participation challenges, finding the instructional time for soft skills within a workforce training setting, and breaking down cross-agency silos. No doubt for those of you involved in career pathway implementations that you recognize a lot of these challenges that are both programmatic and structural issues. Talk a little bit now about what we're doing with capturing various promising practices in IELCE that we're calling bright spots. Capturing these promising practices is in progress now, and we are currently synthesizing the information from an IELCE self-assessment tool used with our collaborative members. Bright spots are meant to document and offer examples of IELCE program practices currently being implemented, and will be aligned with the requirements to help provide guidance. So why capture bright spots? What are the goals? The first goal is to help foster learning and to facilitate the implementation of required IELCE program elements. The second goal is to help document the variety of ways that states and providers have met and overcome common challenges they have experienced. And finally, bright spots will offer practical information about IELCE program elements as they are carried out by states and local providers. How will bright spots be featured and shared? One way that the project team plans to share bright spots is to develop program profiles or vignettes. Also, we hope to provide one or two more in-depth case studies to share and inform not only current, but also future IELCE implementation efforts. As previously stressed, bright spots will feature practices aligned to required IELCE program elements and policy, and will offer guidance on ways states and providers are operationalizing program elements. Bright spots will also feature instances of flexible or innovative implementation and links to research on related promising practices. What might be featured bright spots and practices include continuing the conversation on what content might be featured in bright spots. Promising practices could include 1, implementation strategies around the integrated and concurrency concepts. 2, IET offerings such as curricula outlines, pathway graphics, and etc. And 3, the use of data for program design. These are merely examples since best practices will be informed by the lessons learned from our collaborative programs. It's important to also note that the project team understands, and bright spots will take into account, that states and providers may be in different phases of implementation and have a variety of practices. We hope to be able to feature practices that will benefit a variety of states and providers' situations. How will bright spots be identified and documented? As I mentioned earlier, the project team is identifying bright spots through a process involving a self-assessment tool available to the IELCE collaborative members. That tool is not yet available publicly. The information from the assessment tool will result in a matrix of challenges, solutions, and best practices that is crosswalked to the IELCE requirements. There will be a review, feedback, and selection process to finalize the bright spots for publication and dissemination. I should add that we feel that the self-assessment tool will be a resource to help all local providers and states assess their practices, identify challenges and issues they experience with IELCE program implementation, and to provide reflection on promising practices. In addition, the project team believes that states and local programs could use the tool for ongoing program assessment and planning, or as a professional development resource. What does the self-assessment documentation framework tool look like? As mentioned before, the tool will provide a resource to states and providers. It will be an implementation, planning, and program review guide that can help with assessing, describing, and reflecting on IELCE implementation and program practices. The tool offers guiding questions within 4 thematic sections that ask the local program provider to assess their program practices, align with regulations and other criteria, to rate their implementation progress, and to document program challenges, solutions, and best practices. How will states and their provider partners benefit from sharing bright spots? We envision bright spots benefiting states and providers in ways that also align to the overarching goals for capturing bright spots. These include, 1, offering local and regional examples of practices that foster learning and implementation of required IELCE program elements. 2, documenting practices across a continuum of implementation activities as a way to help states plan and move forward. And 3, serving as a resource that offer actionable information or for how-to guidance and professional development activities. My final slide is, again, the public website that has all the resources we've been able to pull together today around IELCE and its related concepts. So we're going to move now to the question and answer feature and begin to address any of the questions that were raised. Oh, this one for Sharon. How do we sign up for Manager Mondays? Here, do we have more information about the mini grants? So Sharon, I see, is on mute. If we get her off of mute, see if there are additional questions. They all pertain to the various COAB activities going on at the moment.
Barry, can I help you?
Yes, I finished my presentation and we're going to the Q&A.
Great.
Would
you like me to read them for you?
Yeah, the first 3 were related to your COAB activities.
Mm-hmm.
So
there's one that's asking, what are some resources for additional training? Did you read that one?
For additional training in IELCE. In Michigan, we are trying to look for program models and best practices. Our state adult eds seem slow to respond. You know, I think that for general resources in IELCE, right now we're only working with the collaborative members of those 36 states, so I'm not sure if Michigan is in that group or not. Other than that, I think commercial providers and I know I heard Bob talk about their IELCE materials that they have, could possibly be resources for other states. As we go forward with our Building Opportunities project, though, we're going to be moving rapidly towards an approach which shares the resources that we've developed with everyone. And there is a public website, as I mentioned in the slides, that do have right now a whole group of resources on there related directly to IELCE.
Great, thanks. Another question here. What advice or guidance do you have for programs looking to create an IET, but have a small population of students that are looking for employment?
Yes, that's a common question we get from our small states with very small local providers. It's tricky to try to find a large enough cohort for a very specific occupation. So I think what has to happen in those, and what we've seen happening in our states that are in the collaborative, there's a little more generic approach to the occupational areas, where more of a sector training approach like healthcare is being delivered through an IELCE program, and individuals who have very specific then objectives like medical records or LPN or things like that get more individualized assistance through partnerships with either public workforce centers or employers that are willing to work with the adult ed provider that have links to those kinds of employment. So it's difficult if you don't have that critical mass of students in one particular occupation. So you have to think a little more broadly about sector areas, or even more broadly than that, and have a more generic approach to occupational training.
Barry, we have two people who asked, what is the Manhattan Strategy Group?
Oh, I, in my work as the state director of adult ed in Minnesota up until 2012, had not heard of Manhattan Strategy Group. They were busy working in other fields, and I don't know all the history of MSG, but in the last 5 to 7 years, they have been increasingly involved in workforce education and adult education, and have had a number of projects that they have completed through contracting with U.S. Department of Labor as well as U.S. DOE. So they're newer on the scene, but a quite well-respected consulting group in many, many areas that has evolved over time.
And I should also say the Manhattan Strategy Group is the LINCS strand partner at the National COEB Conference. So when you attend those wonderful LINCS sessions, Manhattan Strategy Group sponsors those, and they're a strand partner. Barry, did you also see the questions here? How long is the project funded for, and how do we know if our state is part of the collaborative?
Yeah, I think we have that information on the public website. We're in our second year of funding for helping the 36-state collaborative going on, and so we're in negotiations with the federal office too on how we should be continuing and what other resources they'd like us to develop. So we're not sure right now exactly where we'll be by next year, but we'll certainly be completing this year's work with the 36-state collaborative and have a lot of resources developed that. We're anticipating that a lot of the things that I've talked about, self-assessment tool, and we are actually in the process of developing a few other resource tools, will be available fairly shortly, possibly by into next year for all states to use.
Barry, we have a question here. Have any of the 36 states developed resources focused on serving the needs of foreign trained immigrants through IELCE training?
Yes. A few have, and I can't tell you which ones. They're not the states that I'm working with. 8 states myself, and I don't think any of them have targeted specifically those individuals. But talking to the other coaches, I know there are states that have done that. I guess if I were to be contacted, I could certainly link up with my coaches and let that person know which actual local programs have targeted those individuals. I don't know off the top of my head.
So Barry, we have someone here who's on the LINCS website and they can't find the list of the states that are participating.
Ah, okay, all right. Well, we'll need to put that on then. That should be there. So we can do that. We can add that to the website. So
Barry, if you're able to have that added by the time this Zoom notice goes out tomorrow at 3 Eastern Standard, we'll be sure to include that just so everybody hears that on this webinar. Okay.
All right. Yep. Okay. Now I just have to mention that if your state is on there, on that list, what we have operating in your state is the state office as a person designated as a collaborative member, and one local provider in each state was invited to participate by the state Office of Adult Education. I think there are a couple states with more than one local provider, but typically it's just one local provider that's working with us on this project. So it's not like all local providers have access to, for example, the community practice private discussion, just the ones designated as members within that state.
Great. Well, Barry, we want to thank you so much for your time, and I want to now turn this over to Robert for a few final words before we close this out.
Great.
Yes, thanks to everyone for joining in. Barry, congratulations. Wonderful job. I thought I had it all down pat. I've learned a heck of a lot, so that was wonderful. Yeah, so in wrapping up just in the last few seconds here, again, what Barry's alluding to really leads up to everything that we've been building in our career exploration and soft skills. A lot of those concepts that are so challenging to get through, not just to native speakers, but obviously to folks in a second language. And so we've done that at beginning, intermediate, and advanced levels. So concepts like career pathways, things that really didn't exist when I started about 30 years ago when it was more conversationally based. So students are getting a great introduction to the idea of life after ESL and how they can start building that as early as possible. And the neat thing is even if teachers might be just starting their career in adult education, and a lot of these concepts might be even emerging, with their knowledge base, Burlington's going to provide everything that they need. The concepts of career clusters, we've added almost 200 job cards, and the idea of what used to be known in many years ago as the occupational handbook, and now we bring it all to learners. And as they're finding careers that interest them, again, as early as possible, even in their ESL careers, they're noting that it's added to their digital portfolio. So when they get a chance to meet with a career counselor, career navigator, or their teachers or someone at the school, they've built that career pathway again as early as possible. Again, we're talking about credentialed individuals from other countries and helping them, along with all of our educators, understand the fact that sometimes they can start very close to where they were credentialed in their previous occupation in their home country, but it might be a career ladder that they still have to go through with the recredentialing. And also we hear a lot that, isn't it neat that a lot of students who might be overwhelmed by thinking they have to immediately go and get a 4-year degree and what have you, can understand that such things as a career ladder exists and that you can take things one step at a time. I mentioned the job cards. And in wrapping up something that I talked about earlier, to me, just the biggest thing, if I'm starting this journey in the United States, is wouldn't it be neat, like I said, long before they might actually get a chance and capacity-wise with English language proficiency to sit long-term with a career navigator, career counselor, whatever your state might call them or at your institution, they can start experiencing what a career counselor does. Again, even at say the high beginning level and moving on up, so that they get a chance to build that idea and not enter eventually into career training programs cold without the idea of what exists and and they're being exposed to the kind of vocabulary, the dialogues that native speakers would just naturally enter into those IET, those IELCE programs. So without further ado, again, see you on the web at burlingtonenglish.com/contact. And to our friends at OACE, I'll see you tomorrow in Ohio, and then see you in Illinois, and then Utah's coming up. So back over to Sharon and Barry. Thanks so much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Robert. And again, thank you to Burlington English, because without their sponsorship, we wouldn't be able to do this free of charge. So I also just want to turn this back to Barry and see if he has any final words before we close this out.
Just that I'm so happy that we've moved from WIA to WIOA, and specifically that the IELTS Civics program expanded into this workforce arena a little more heavily. And what I've been finding is that folks that were experienced in career pathway development also are really great resources for the IELCE program, because it really has a strong link to the great work that's been done over the years on career pathways in adult education. So it's something that I think really will benefit our immigrant and refugee population and those folks that are learning English. It's a terrific program, and you should be checking with your states if you're a local provider to see when the next RFP is coming out for that grant program.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate your expertise on this, Mr. Schaefer, and thank you again to Burlington English and to everybody who joined us today. So we'll see you on the next webinar next week. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.